Hello everyone, welcome to the next episode of Let's Design Diablo. This is episode 14, in which we will sort of refine the texture in the middle of the bottom bar. We'll play with the glows behind the mana and health globe, colors everywhere. We'll continue the project of cleaning up all of our layers as well. And a lot of this is actually motivated just by showing and hiding layers and deciding which layers we want to keep. So that's a good thing to do, and we're going to continue it. Here's where we left off, and we're seeing that the glows behind the mana and health globe I think look pretty cool. They're not, I think, in their final form, but it's a good idea. It extends the color outside of the globes a little bit, but in a way that sort of makes sense. And so we're going to leave that there for now, and we're continuing to look at what layers we want to keep and which we want to remove. I'm using a layer that's just named a bunch of exclamation points so that we know where we are in the process of going through the layers to determine which ones we want to keep, because we bounce around a lot and I don't want to lose my place in the file. So looking at this darker color in the middle, and it's doing some interesting things to the texture of the health globe, making it a bit deeper, a bit redder. I like that, although it is definitely falling even further back from the level of attention that the mana globe gets. So although I sort of like the way those deeper colors look, we keep some of it, I think. We don't want it to be grossly disproportionate to the blue on the other side. But that layer that was making the health globe darker also made the middle texture darker, which I like because it helps us get closer to the point where we can maybe put some text on top of it and have that text be readable. We're also looking at what that layer did to the mana globe, and it's really adding some interesting depth, and I hope that we keep that. I think that we do. It's a little bit more purple than blue. It brings the mana globe back a little bit in terms of its brightness, and it allows us therefore to give a little bit more of a darker color, a depth to the health globe on the other side. So that's a nice change as well. I think this is the right strategy, making the background texture in the middle area darker, and because again it's just going to provide a more even I don't know how to say it. It's going to provide a more even surface with less contrast to put text on top of. And now that we have that idea in place, we're looking at what the border to that area could look like. It's not bad the way it is, just with that very simple thin line, but wondering what else might work there. Yeah, the border to that mana globe kind of looks cool when it's not there, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense for it not to be there at all, so I'm just reducing the opacity of it a bit. And we found another one of those super blue layers with Diablo on it. And continuing on through the layers, all these layers are making up the mana globe. That's what gives it that richness. Never be afraid to just pile on layer on top of layer on top of layer, because that's a lot of times what gives a texture the kind of complexity that will fool the eye into thinking that it looks real. If your eye can tell that something's not real, it's not going to produce it's hard to fool our brain because we see things that are real whenever we're not looking at the monitor. So when we are trying to create something in game that has a legitimately distressed look about it, you have to really not you have to really be not lazy about the textures that are making that up. And I can't draw, so I'm just smashing a bunch of layers together to make that happen. That little old paint, that was a paintbrush paintbrush stroke that I was using much earlier on to give the mana globe some dimension, but I don't think we need it anymore. There's that little tiny highlight that we're hiding and showing and moving the mouse all around now. That is kind of cool. It's kind of like a smoky after image of something, which I think looks nice in there. So now getting back to this border, just trying a few different things, looking at this sort of torn red fabric. Maybe that could work there. Probably not, though. My guess is we'll use that somewhere. And continuing on, looking at different layers. Showing and hiding that big rectangle that covers up all of the ideas above from the interface below, just when we want to see the interface by itself. So now we're playing with these horns, and I think this is such a neat interface element. As yet, I haven't found the right place for it, but thinking maybe since this middle area is so prominent, so central to the interface, that maybe this is called for here. Maybe the horns, since they are so prominent as well, could work in this area. Yeah, not bad. I think it looks decent there. Obviously, it's not towards the top. It has to fade into a thicker line because the horn itself is fairly thick. So that little thin border is not going to do it. And also the colors are not quite right. The horn is more of a gold color, like brass, and the rest of the border is sort of in the gray, grayscale tones. So we're going to work on that. And to create that thicker border, I brought down that ornamented border that we're now cutting out of the background it was originally on. I have no idea where I got this. It may have also been the Diablo 3, the old fan site kit. I'm just cutting a new, fresh copy of this out because it had gotten, I think, a bit distorted over time. And I had masked it a bunch of times, so I just want to get a fresh version of it. So that's a good start. It's obviously way too long, so we're going to cut it down on either side. Yep, something like that. Snip, snip. And now we have the color issue. Oh, we're going to try that again. Yeah, it's a bit better. It doesn't look completely like the horns are part of it. I think mostly because the color is not right. So we'll get to that. Oh, I'm making it a smart layer now, so we can add a filter that is not destructive to the layer itself and is not a adjustment layer. This is the kind of filter we want. So in order to do that, we have to make it a smart object. So okay, playing with the color now, trying to bring it more into line with the color of the horns. I like that brass look, so just trying to figure out how to do that. Switching over to levels, yeah, something like that was getting close. And we may also want to bring the horns back a little bit to match. Although we do like that brass, the most important consideration right now is that they look cohesive. That the bar looks cohesive with the horns. So we're gonna bring that, constantly saving too, because Photoshop is still struggling a bit with all our layers. But we're fixing it. It's down to 1.7 gigs, so that's good. Yeah, okay, so you can see the right horn changing a bit and starting to look more like it's part of that. Too much saturation. There we go. Okay, so there we go. Now the horn is starting to look like it belongs there. I'd like to use that brass color though somewhere. That's an idea. It's something to keep in the back of our minds. We had that a while back with the angel and the demon, and for some reason it hasn't truly carried forward. But it's a cool idea that I want to keep in the back of the mind. All right, so we've done that also to the left horn. We just copied and pasted it, and now we're thinking about this border shadow. It should probably cast some kind of shadow on the border, and we're thinking about this rock jutting out. Previous to this, when there was that thinner border there, the rock was coming in front. That was cool. The question is, do we want to do that now with this thicker border? I think we give it a shot, and you'll see how it works out. Adding a shadow here is going to do a lot for us. Right now, that border just looks like slapped on there, but with a nice, generous amount of shadow here, we can make it look more, I don't know, polished, cohesive. Not sure what the right word is, but gives it more life, more dimension. There it goes. Right, so now that bar is really popping, and we bring it back, I think, a tiny bit, but the bar is really popping, and I think that's what we want if text is going to live in that area. Thinking about bringing that rock to have it jut out in front. I don't remember if we like this or not, although I suspect that we don't. Excuse me. I don't know quite what I'm doing now. Putting something... Okay, I'm creating a folder and putting that whole middle bar into the folder, all the layers that make that up into the folder, so I can then create a mask on the folder itself. And paint around that rock. Yeah, it's a cool idea, but I think in practice it doesn't really work that well. Stuff like that is great when you can break borders like that, but here it's almost like the border is too thick, too prominent for the eye to believe that that rock would come up in front of it. It's just not the right shape for it. But anyway, that's fine because it looks good, I think, the way it is. Yeah, so showing and hiding another layer as we go through. That layer really did, I think, something interesting, which was to flatten out that whole texture. That rock that was jutting up out in front that we were just playing with. That's nice, but again, this is an area that's going to have to hold information. So we're also looking at now something interesting that happened by mistake. Another happy accident where we got a little bit of purple, tiny bit of a hint of purple in that background color, which I think gives a tiny bit of an impression that the mana globe color is coming through onto that background texture. And very subtle, but I really like it. It has to be, if it's going to work, it has to be really subtle. Yeah. So we're thinking about how, if possible, we can carry that over to the health globe side, and to what degree we want to try and do that. Oh, and I have some ideas. I think I was talking through some things, and I had this idea that in addition to these videos, I'm going to create videos where we just talk about game design decisions. A few people on Reddit commented that, well, I'm not going to get into it here because the whole idea is to create these separate discussions, but there were some comments on Reddit that I think were really interesting and prompted some thinking on my part about different design decisions. Again, not game design decisions, not necessarily interface design, but they intersect. They intersect a lot. You know, if you drew a Venn diagram between game design and interface design, there'd be a lot that overlaps. So inevitably we're going to get into those discussions, and I'm excited to do that. And it's not like one view is right and one view is wrong. I think there's many, many ways to make a successful game. The question is, what do we want from a Diablo game at this point in 2019? So those are the questions we're going to be exploring in those separate videos, if I can possibly ever get to them, which I hope that I can. Alright, continuing to show and hide layers. Looking at what maybe could provide a border on the bottom. There's those little glowy borders, which are okay, but nothing special. Here's an old ornament. Just moving it around, see if it obviously works anywhere, which it doesn't. We'll just move it up and out of the way for now. Or get rid of it, because we have plenty of those. There's a vertical version of that bar. Just making sure we already have it, which we do, so we get rid of it. This is just another little border, not necessary. I think we get rid of that. Go on. Continuing on to just delete a few layers that we're not using anymore. It's kind of hard sometimes to even figure out where they are on a design, but if you Control-click on the layer itself, it'll bring up a selection, and that will at least show you where those pixels are, and you can decide whether they're providing any value, and if not, goodbye. Alright, don't need any of those. Don't need that. Don't need that. That's like a little something in the skill icon area. That's our square frame. Okay, so now we're getting into trying to figure out how we, if we want to, and if so, how we sort of mimic what's happening on the right with that little bit of blue or purple in the middle area. How we would replicate that on the left. And so I think this texture that we show here is something that is headed in the right direction there. Now we have to bring it back quite a bit because it's just too prominent. But I think it's doing the right thing in essence, which is just giving a red highlight to that rock. Yeah, that's nice. And just bringing it back and making it more subtle. Yeah, it's more prominent than what's going on the right, but I think it's okay. Like, we can definitely adjust it as we add text or whatever we're adding to that middle area. But the idea that this glow is having some effect on that texture is a really positive. I think it gives the whole design sort of cohesiveness that you don't see a lot of in game interfaces. Just because games are so freaking hard to make and code that I think design or like visual integrity sometimes gets lost, especially in the interface. We have all these fancy game engines to provide, you know, power and interest and visual visual interest to the gameplay area, but what you need on the interface is just essentially artwork. You need, depending on the kind of game world you're trying to create, like in just old school, just hard work on making it look great. It's a totally different type of endeavor than making the game itself, the gameplay itself, look great, because it's static. So for the most part, like it pretty much stays the same. So I think that something that game companies get wrong is the idea that since it's static and going to be there all the time, you don't need to spend as much time or effort in what it looks like, because it's an easier endeavor. It's just one frame essentially. But I think that that's that's misinterpreting the level of importance that the look of the interface has, because it's up for the same reason. It's up all the time. It has to look phenomenal to the player, I think, in my opinion. And Blizzard understands this. Their interfaces have been amazing throughout the years. So when I see a lot of new games today, it's like the game itself gets all the attention, and then the interface, while it may function properly, sometimes doesn't get all of the visual attention that it deserves. So I'm just trying to focus on that. So right now we're seeing if we want to carry any of the color from the mana globe out even further onto the bar to the right of the angel, to the left of the demon. I think for now we don't. I think there's quite a bit of color there already. And now we're looking at this gem arch to see if maybe the middle of this area is a good place to put it. I mean, it would seem to make sense because it is the center of the design, and it's such a central... I don't know, the gem arch is so prominent, it feels like it belongs in the center somewhere really strong, where it can make a big impression. And this is probably the most appropriate place for it. We still have it over the skill icon areas, and a little bit questioning that choice, and it's something that we can continue to think about. Oh, that's right, I put it at the bottom. I can't remember where it ends up at the end of this video. This is the last video before I'm totally caught up on where the design is at the present moment when I'm recording this. So it's been a while since I've actually worked on the design because I've been trying to catch up on these videos. So now we're just thinking, okay, if it's going to live there, then maybe we don't want it over the skill areas. See what that looks like. They really fall into the background when they don't have that gem arch to highlight them. I'm thinking maybe we can use this element, which is not currently in use on the bar. Getting towards the end, so just throwing some ideas out there. Could be above everything. That's not bad. If we flip it horizontally, or vertically, I mean, the pointy part would be pointing down towards the skill. That's a possibility. But, I forget if we leave it. I guess we do leave it there. I think we wrap it up. Yep. So that's episode 14. Thanks for watching. I think we again made some really good progress. Super happy with the texture in that bottom middle area, especially with those little glows from the mana and health globe onto that area. Continuing to go through the layers. Good progress here, and I hope to see you next time. Have a great day, and thanks for tuning in.